former Royal Marine turned animal rescuer Pen Farthing has safely returned from Afghanistan with nearly 200 cats and dogs. Mr Farthing set up an animal shelter in Kabul after serving in Afghanistan, and he gained criticism from some of his campaign to bring his staff and animals into the UK.
Well, the animals, who were flown to Heathrow by private charter plane, are now in quarantine. Very shortly, we'll be hoping to speak to Pen Farthing himself. He's in quarantine in Oslo at the moment. But first, we can speak to his wife, Kaiser, who joins us from Oslo as well. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I mean, you must be feeling a huge sense of relief that you know that your husband is safe, but I guess at the same time, it's not quite, I know, the outcome that you wanted.
Yes, I am very relieved that he's here, and I had a very good night's sleep tonight. Still, it's mixed feelings. The operation isn't over. We still have staff on the ground, and we have more work to do.
You were in Kabul, weren't you? What was it like leaving Pen and leaving the staff and leaving the animals there and coming to safety yourself?
It was heartbreaking to actually to leave the staff, and the second I landed on Norwegian soil, I was crying. I said I wanted to be still in Kabul. After a couple of days, I realized that being in safety, I can do more. We're working day and night to find solutions for those who are still on the ground.
I mean, the situation was changing on a daily, hourly basis, wasn't it? How did you feel when you got that call and you knew that he'd been able to get on the plane?
Well, it wasn't, I didn't realize that he was actually up until he then landed. He had a lot of work to do with loading all the animals. He got some really good help from military people on the ground to help him loading. But it was a big job. We wasn't sure if the flight was going to land. We felt that we were running out of time. It had been a lot of delays in the whole system of getting the flight to land. And also, he had an attempt a few days before to get in, where he was actually inside the airport with his staff. But then he was turned around because the rules changed. So I wasn't celebrating that he was up before. I actually knew that.
Let's bring your husband, Pen, in right now. Pen, thank you for joining us. So we've heard a bit about the journey. Tell us what it was like, because you've had a huge amount of success bringing so many animals out. What was it like on that flight?
It was very, very mixed emotions, to be honest. As Kaiser just said, getting the animals out was part of the mission, but it wasn't, the whole mission. The fact that I'd got the staff, into that airport, and they'd been turned around because we didn't have the correct paperwork because the rules had changed just 2 hours before, was absolutely heartbreaking. To be turned around at gunpoint by the Taliban and forced back out, to the streets, especially in the aftermath of that absolutely horrendous bombing. So I'm.
What did you say to the staff?
I'm happy we got the animals out.
What did you say to the staff? And how, Pen, what did you say to the staff, and how did they react? Because, I mean, it must have been horrendous.
It was, yeah. I mean, as we left the airport, we were tear gassed. And so by the time we got back to obviously our base, it was probably a good hour or so after we'd been forced out of the airport. Everybody was just crying and sad, and shock, really, and shock. And that's when the staff come up to me and they were saying, "Look, you've got to leave. Get these animals out of here. We'll try another way." And that's when the realisation came in that if I stayed any longer now, I'm just going to put them in more danger by being there. And it's one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make in my life. But I realised there's no way I could get them into that airport now. Their paperwork, whilst the British government had obviously given them the correct paperwork, Joe Biden actually, because they, the Americans controlled the airport, Joe Biden had changed the rules on who could actually enter. So it overruled the paperwork that we were given by the British. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking, totally heartbreaking.
Well, we can imagine, and I'm sure very frustrating for you to have been that close. Just tell us what happened on the flight then, because I know that your original plan was that it was going to be you, it was going to be your staff and their families, and it was going to be room for however many other people that you would be able to take, as well as the animals then in the cargo hold. How many people were on that flight in the end?
Sadly, on that flight, out there was just me. I asked the British again and said, would you like to actually, add some people onto this flight? They reassured me that they had enough capacity for all the people they needed to get out. And they thanked me for the offer and said, no, it's all yours.
How many seats were on the plane? How many empty seats?
There were several empty seats on that flight.
Several hundred, did you say?
I said there were several empty seats on that flight out of there. But like I said, I went round and everybody assured me that they had enough lift capacity for all the people that needed to leave. Remember, I was probably the last person to enter, that airport. It was closed. The Americans, the British, obviously had stopped taking people in because there had to be a point where they stopped taking people in. So they assured me that they had enough lift capacity for everybody that was now inside that airport.
Did you offer those seats to the British government? Because there are people stuck there. I mean, the government say there are about 1,000. Other estimates go up to 8,000. It's heartbreaking to hear that there were empty seats on your flight.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the situation, obviously, within the airport. I'm hoping they got everybody out that was in there that needs to get out. Obviously, the Americans are still there. So, obviously, I had no contact with the American administration running the airport. I was only talking to the British side of things.
You were on the airport, Pen. We were working, of course, to support him as much as we could, and we contacted the flight tower, and they said we will contact any other nations, and we will say that Pen Farthing has available seats. So it was all informed about, and we did the best we could.
So that offer wasn't taken up. I mean, Pen, I'm sure you're aware there has been controversy over what happened. There have been accusations that, pets were put above people. It was something, a quote, wasn't it, from Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, who talked about the fact that he wasn't going to do that. Major Andrew Fox is one of those people who's spoken out. He's a former paratrooper who served 3 tours in Afghanistan, and he has talked about it being insane that they were facilitated into the airport with British citizens, interpreters left outside. So I think there is the feeling from some people who are voicing their thoughts that they don't think it was the right decision to help the animals through when people weren't helped through in the same way.
Firstly, let's make this crystal clear, because I am getting absolutely sick to death of explaining this. There's a cargo hold. You can't pop people in a cargo hold. So I had passenger seats in the passenger cabin, and I had cargo hold underneath. So the animals went into the cargo hold. People cannot go in there. The empty seats were above. Nobody in the British government facilitated my entry into that airport. I did that with the Taliban. I came up to the British checkpoint. That was the first time, and this is well into the airport. The Taliban and the British are stood there. There's some barbed wire separating them, or they were. Obviously, they're not there anymore. There's some barbed wire separating them. That was the first time I spoke to any British people. So whoever is making any accusations or any comments needs to actually have been stood there on the ground to see how I got into that airport. Nobody facilitated my entry above any interpreters or above anybody else. It was me and the truck full of dogs and cats, which went into a cargo hold where you cannot pop people.
Well, Pen, I'll tell you who's making some of the accusations. The Foreign Affairs Select Committee Chair, Tom Tugendhat. He served in Afghanistan, as you know. He said the difficulty is getting people into and out of the airport, and we've just used a lot of troops to bring 200 dogs. Meanwhile, my interpreter's family are likely to be killed. Is he lying?
there was no troops facilitated my entry to the airport. I facilitated their entry to the airport with the Taliban. I don't know how many different Taliban commanders I had to sit and speak to. No troops, no British troops. I'm sorry, but this, I can't remember who you just said because I've only just woken up.
Tom Tugendhat, the Foreign Affairs Select Committee.
Was he actually there with me on the ground? Was he in that cab with me as I drove into that airport? There was no British troops facilitated my entry into that airfield. So I need to make that crystal clear.
Yeah, I know you have made it really clear. So in that case, are you saying that there is some sort of campaign to make you look bad? Because why would he say that?
No, I think what it is, I totally think what it is the fact that obviously this evacuation was forced on the British by the Americans. I mean, that's 100% obvious. And obviously people would have to be left behind because there just wasn't enough time to get everybody out who need to get out. I mean, there were people out in the street who've still got British passports who are still out there. I could not get them into that airport. I tried. The Taliban would only let me go. They were like, because I was just an obvious Westerner. These other people were of Afghan descent but had British passports. They weren't letting them in, and there were no soldiers, no Americans, no one outside the airport able to obviously deal with the Taliban. So, I understand that people are upset, and they probably are saying, these kind of comments because they don't understand the situation on the ground because they weren't there. People always make comments about things that they actually have no factual knowledge of, because they're upset, and I get that. I'm upset that people were left behind.
Yeah.
But I could not do anything different. And there was nothing different we could do.
Talking about being upset, I'm sure you're also aware that there's been what is being reported as a leaked voicemail that you left an aide to Ben Wallace, Peter Quentin. It's sort of a heated message that they are saying was left. Was this you?
I'm going to have to say now so everybody knows. I'm incredibly embarrassed about my language. I do apologise to everybody who's listened to that. It was, that I was at the lowest point I possibly could be. I understand how the world works, but emotion got the better of me. So for all those who have had to listen to that, I do apologise for my language. I should not have said it like that. But the sentiment, yes, I was just incredibly upset, angry, frustrated. It was the lowest point. I had no other option. I didn't know what else to do. So that's why, you've probably heard some colourful language.
Yeah, and what options do you have from that point of view? Are there plans in place? What happens next?
We are considering plans now, what we can do. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything here because, for them, I've no idea who's obviously watching this news item. So, we have got a few ideas, got nothing concrete yet. We are working on things. We want to obviously see how the situation unfolds, in the next day or so once the Americans do leave. My one concern, and that's why I'm not, sat here with a big smile on my face, is because I had to leave them behind because of some paperwork. Can you believe that? It was literally a war zone and the paperwork was wrong and the people were on the right side of the fence.
Yeah.
Are they in danger?
Potentially, yes. Their details, the Taliban know who they were. They've obviously, this is probably a fairly high up the news item agenda list. So, I believe they truly are now. So we need to, we're playing it by day, and we'll see what we can do.
Well, listen, thanks both very much for joining us this morning. And Pen, obviously, as you've been saying, we appreciate the fact. I know you hadn't had much sleep and you got up to talk to us. So thank you very much for that. And we do hope the rest of the mission to get your staff out of Afghanistan safely is successful. But thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to Kaiser Marcus as well.